Are you still unmarried? My spouse is a stunning secretary. You are a lowly high school graduate, and I live in a totally other world. My old classmate John started disparaging me as soon as we got back together after a 30-year separation. After high school, I was the only one among us unable to continue our education. I could see why he wanted to brag. He wanted to share the news of his stunning wife's professional accomplishment. I could have gone to a better high school than John, and wouldn't have had to start working right out of high school if my family hadn't been struggling financially. I was a loser in that regard at the time. It was then that I noticed a woman in a blue suit coming back with food on her plate. I understand. She must be John's renownedly attractive secretary. Allow me to present you. This is Ashley, my wife. Gorgeous, isn't she? She might be deemed attractive, but her makeup was heavy. Ashley began to shake when she saw me. Michael Robinson is my name. This year, I turned 45. I am the president of Robinson Construction, a 7,200-person corporation. After hearing this, one may assume that I've lived a life of privilege and distinction. But the truth is anything but privileged. It was an ongoing battle of resentment and adversity. My family didn't have much money. My mother was left to raise me alone after my father vanished shortly after I was born. I just remember my mother frying bread crust in oil. I don't remember ever having snacks. I would have most likely passed out on the way home from school if there hadn't been school meals. It's difficult to believe that a child in a developed nation like the U.S. would experience continual hunger. Naturally, I turned to studying any time I had free time because I couldn't afford games. I consequently consistently finished at the top of my primary school class. I was favored by my professors, and I was able to forget about the struggles of poverty while I was in school. Even in high school, my grades were excellent, and I was respected by my peers. I took on leadership roles, serving as class president and student council president, leading a fulfilling school life. Everything changed towards the end of my sophomore year of high school when it was time to decide on a future path. Both my mother and my teacher had pained expressions on their faces. Despite having the grades to easily get into the top university in the state, our financial situation meant I couldn't pursue higher education. My mother tearfully pleaded with my teacher. "Isn't there anything we can do? He loves studying and has good grades. It's too cruel to deprive him of the opportunity to study just because he was born into a poor family." My acquaintance, the president of a construction company, actively supports students who work hard through adversity. How about we trust Michael to him? He could work while taking distance education courses and earn a college degree. After hearing this, my mother pondered for a while. Construction. But I've heard it's a tough field. I doubt he'd have time to study leisurely with the daily grind. Continuing his studies seems impossible. It all depends on Michael's effort. It's tough and requires perseverance, but it's not impossible. The president is a passionate and upstanding person. Why not give it a try? Thanks to my teacher's encouragement, I ended up working for Robinson Construction, while everyone else went to college. I was branded a loser. At that point, there was one person who gleefully watched my life's downturn: John Smith. Since elementary school, he had always been my academic rival. John's mother was extremely keen on education, making him study all the time, except for Christmas Day. During elementary school, I was also interested in playing around, so I couldn't always score perfect marks, making John the top student of the year. However, things changed in high school. Still harboring hopes for the future, I wanted to go to college and learn more. Once I started studying seriously, I quickly surpassed John, and throughout high school, I never relinquished my position as the top student. We even aspired to the same university, the one with the highest SAT scores in the state. You're aiming for the same college as me, huh? But do you even have the money to attend and pay tuition? He hit a sore spot, and I was left speechless. This issue had always been buried deep within me. Telling my mother would only make her sad, and sharing it with other adults would only garner sympathy, nothing more. While everyone else took for granted their dreams of college life, for me, it was a distant, unattainable future. The only selfish request I made during that time was to at least let me take the entrance exams. That year, I placed at the top of those exams, finally making peace with my situation. Thus, after graduating high school, John went on to college, and I started my career at Robinson Construction. The construction industry is a male-dominated field where loud voices can be heard everywhere. As someone who was still clueless, I was trained on site by Jack Robinson, the president of Robinson. When I first joined the company, I rented a room in Jack's house, where I was allowed to live. I managed to secure time for study at night, while working hard on my tasks. At that time, Jack's wife was pregnant, and they soon welcomed a new member to their family, a lovely girl named Sarah. Sarah became very attached to me, and whenever I was away for work, she would cry loudly, looking for me. Sarah really likes you, Michael. She won't stop crying even when her father holds her, but she smiles as soon as you pick her up. I gained experience with other carpenters on site, but eventually I was told that I was better suited for office work, such as calculations and design. I quickly learned to work on a computer and became a valuable asset. In due course, I graduated from a correspondence university. Feeling a sense of accomplishment, I decided not to pursue graduate school. By the time I was in my 30s, I started to be entrusted with important management roles in the company. Having someone who knows the field in charge can significantly change the flow of work. The voice of the site workers was better heard, and the management side could provide more detailed instructions. The company's performance improved significantly. The number of employees increased, and the company grew substantially. When I first joined, it was a medium-sized construction company, but now it has become a large corporation. At that time, Sarah had turned 18 and was growing up to be simply beautiful. We remained close, and Sarah developed romantic feelings for me. Eventually, my feelings for her evolved from seeing her as a reliable little sister to wanting to protect her at all costs. One day, I was called to a high-end restaurant by Jack, where I was told something surprising. "Michael, do you have a girlfriend or someone you like?" "No, I'm quite happy with my work." "Then would you consider marrying Sarah? She wants to marry you no matter what. I'd rather have her marry someone I trust like you than someone unknown." As I was processing the situation, the sliding door at the back opened, and Sarah entered, dressed in a beautiful gown. Finally understanding the situation, I straightened up and melted, looking at Sarah. Though our feelings were mutual, I still wanted to formally propose. "Jack, please let me marry Sarah. I promise to make her happy." Sarah shed tears and whispered, "Thank you." Thus, I married Sarah and took the Robinson surname. Although I was prepared for some jealousy, almost all the employees were supportive. Having something to protect might indeed change a man. Recently, you seem to have gained a sense of dignity, Michael. Maybe it's because of your long experience in society. It makes me feel safe to follow you. Sarah's reliance and the deep love I feel for her daily are gratifying. 30 years after entering the workforce, I turned 45 and took over as the second president of the company. A significant land development project was underway in our state's central area, and Robinson played a crucial role. That night, a reception for companies involved in the land development was held in a large hotel hall. I attended with 2 other employees. The hall, filled with men from the construction industry, was buzzing with energy. Not only were there employees from companies already involved in the development, but salesmen from companies looking to join were also present. The reception welcomed families, and I saw a few women who looked like the wives of construction company presidents. Sarah mentioned she might join if she finished her chores in time. My colleagues rushed to the buffet, and I took a moment to survey the surroundings with a champagne glass in hand. I locked eyes with a man I recognized from somewhere. He approached me with a big smile. "Michael, is that you?" "It's John. I heard you became a carpenter, but you're involved in this development project too. It's been a long time. I'm surprised you recognize me." It's been 30 years since we last met. I'm a sales department manager, so remembering faces and names is part of my job. I've always been confident in my memory. You don't look much like a carpenter. Initially, I was hired as a carpenter, so he probably thinks I'm still working on site. 30 years have passed, and people change positions or even careers. But it seems John's mind is still stuck at the moment he beat me in high school. Since there was nobody by my side, he must have assumed I didn't bring any family. Are you still alone? Well, I guess that's to be expected. My wife is a beautiful secretary. I'm living in a different world than a high school graduate like you. Just as we reunited after 30 years, he quickly started looking down on me. I was the only one among my classmates who didn't go on to further education after high school graduation. So I understand the desire to boast, wanting to spread the word about his beautiful wife and how he's excelling at work. I get it. If my family hadn't been poor, I wouldn't have had to work right after high school, and I could have attended a better university than John. In that sense, I was a loser back then. Then a woman dressed in a navy blue suit came back with food on a plate. I see she must be John's much bragged about beautiful secretary. This suit is plain, but perhaps she can't dress too flashy given her position as a secretary. Let me introduce you. This is my wife, Ashley. Beautiful, isn't she? I glanced at Ashley and smiled warmly. Sure, she could be considered beautiful, but I always thought she wore too much makeup. Noticing me, Ashley started to tremble. Thank you for the other day. It must have been hard for you. Since then, I'm really sorry about what happened last time. Both the manager and I have been reflecting deeply, and we were planning to apologize in a few days. During our conversation, John, realizing we weren't strangers, gave me a puzzled look. What's this about? My Ashley works in a trading company. There's no way she'd have anything to do with a carpenter like you. What are you talking about? This man is the president of Robinson, the top construction company in the state. We've been doing large transactions with them, and I made a terrible mistake the other day. Ashley was the secretary to the sales manager of one of Robinson's business partners. John had made it sound like she was the president's secretary, but she wasn't in such a responsible position. She had arranged a meeting with the manager and me, but due to a scheduling mistake by Ashley, the meeting fell through. Ashley deeply apologized. I know this is a lot to ask, but could you give us another chance? For my husband's sake, I promise not to make such a disrespectful mistake again. Please, for your husband's sake. Ha. Well, I know him, but we're not exactly close. All right, I'll give you another chance. But make sure you're on time this time. Thank you so much. Ashley continued apologizing, almost in tears. John was stunned at first, but as he began to understand the situation, he turned pale. Robinson, as in the big corporation. You're its president. How did you become a president at your age with just a high school diploma? Well, I worked hard. I've been in the workforce longer than most, so maybe I've just put in more effort. Ashley nodded, deeply impressed. Your achievements are well known to us. You were reputed to be talented, but it's your attitude towards valuing the network of people you work with that's highly regarded. John's mood worsened as he saw his proud, beautiful wife bowing and scraping to me, whom he looked down upon, making him feel even more inferior. So you were married too? Ashley asked. Yeah, I got married when I was 23. How long have you and Ashley been married? John replied. I'm married at 32. We're both career-oriented, leading a work-centered life. A power couple, having the economic means to always dress beautifully. Both spouses building their careers is indeed something to boast about. Ashley looked around. Is Mrs. Robinson not here? I've heard she's beautiful. I've been wanting to meet her. My wife should be here soon. Then I'll introduce you. Just the mention of a beautiful wife soured John's mood further, but he probably thought it was just an exaggeration typical of the spouses of important clients. Then Sarah hurried over. Sorry I'm late. The kids just wouldn't go to sleep. John and Ashley were surprised by Sarah's youth. Your wife. How old is she? She looks so young. She's 30 this year. My wife was born the year I joined Robinson. It feels like I've been watching her grow up, waiting for her to mature. Well, it's just like a love story from a movie or drama, isn't it? Every man's dream. Ashley said, clearly amused. I couldn't help but feel a bit flattered. Scratching my head in embarrassment, I explained to Sarah, who joined us late, about John and Ashley. I decided to marry Michael since I was born. I didn't want to risk someone else taking him away, so we got married as soon as I turned 18. What a lovely story. How old are your children now? They're only 5 and 3 years old. We wanted to enjoy some time together as a couple after getting married, so we went on trips abroad and played golf, enjoying a long honeymoon period. Despite Sarah's innocent words, I could sense Ashley's turmoil. It was probably because of Sarah's visible pregnancy. Sarah loves elegant fashion and doesn't seem like someone who is busy raising small children. The jewelry, bags, and shoes she wears are all top of the line. She only buys limited edition items from well-known brands, making her the envy of her brand-loving friends. Ashley seems to compare her belongings to Sarah's and feels down because Sarah seems to have a high interest in branded goods. Even after marrying John, thinking we would have a comfortable life financially, his spending habits are so bad that I still need to work to support our family. So we ended up giving up on having children. Ashley bit her lip in frustration. It must be hard for her to see Sarah affectionately caressing her belly, especially if she gave up on having children for her career. Men can father children at a much older age, but it's not the same for women. John looked displeased, listening to the women's conversation. There's no use complaining about it now. And when it comes to spending, you're just as bad. Normally, if both spouses work, they contribute equally to the household. You always spend so much on your motorcycle hobby, leaving me to foot the bill. And you think flattering your pretty secretary will make everything okay. You're one to talk, buying all those unnecessary brand bags and clothes. Having one of each should be enough. But no, you buy a new one every time a new collection comes out. As the argument between the couple escalated, Sarah left to get some food. I opened another bottle of champagne, pondering over John's life. He went from the top high school in the state to a prestigious university, landed a coveted sales job, and married a beautiful woman. Without children, he must have more disposable income than most. He used to enjoy making others envious of his lifestyle, but now, having reconnected with me, he must realize that someone he once looked down upon is actually living a happier life. Comparing yourself to others only leads to dissatisfaction. Even if you surpass someone, there's always someone else better. I consider myself happy, but not because I compare myself to John. Happiness is not about feeling superior to others. I'm not a world-renowned millionaire, and I have my share of struggles at work. Comparing myself to the world's rich would be absurd. Since I came here to socialize, I'm looking for new connections. I was about to distance myself from John when he grabbed my sleeve to stop me. Hey, Michael, could you consider doing business with my company? We've been trying to expand into the Asian market, but it failed. We're thinking of shifting to local development projects. So you're saying you missed the boat while focusing overseas? That's a big mistake, I responded. We studied together in high school. Let's work together again as adults. It was a ridiculous proposition. I couldn't understand how he came to that conclusion. I still remember John's contemptuous remark about whether I could afford college tuition. With me out of the picture, he must have felt superior being a top student. There's no good in associating with him now, and I don't particularly feel inclined to. Frankly, John's presence is just annoying. I'm sorry, but I have to decline. I don't see us having a pleasant relationship. John was dumbfounded, clearly not expecting a rejection. Please, Michael, don't say that. My sales haven't been great lately, and I might be demoted if things don't improve. I want to avoid that at all costs. As harsh as it sounds, that's just a reflection of your capabilities. Who would want to start a new deal with someone who's failing? Meanwhile, Ashley, who had been silent until now, chimed in, "Please, do this for me as well." Despite what I'm saying, the truth is, if our performance doesn't improve, I might be forced to leave the company. If John loses his job, we won't be able to live like we used to. What did you do? I asked. Ashley reluctantly begins to speak, biting his lip in frustration. Actually, he had an affair with a client's wife. As a result, that couple ended up divorcing, and we were sued for a large sum in damages. The company found out, and now I'm handing in my resignation. Are you okay with that, Ashley? I know you from our professional dealings, so I have some idea of your character. Aren't you actually unable to forgive him? Ashley looks down silently, then spits out in frustration. I don't want to just throw everything away as it is. I plan to leave him once he's able to stand on his own 2 feet. What? You plan to divorce me? I haven't heard anything about this. I was listening to their argument from a distance. There's no way their relationship can be mended, and I have no intention of getting involved with them or entertaining any business dealings to avoid further provocation. I quietly left their side, met up with Sarah, and we left after a while. What follows is what I heard directly from Ashley about the ongoing situation. The urban redevelopment project in the county involves various industries, but John's company couldn't get involved anywhere. The scandal involving John, the sales manager, had become well known, and it was the reason upper management, considering the company's survival at risk, decided to let John go. Being allowed to take early retirement was a small consolation. The severance pay went to the damages claimed by the husband of John's affair, leaving almost nothing for John himself. Ashley decided to give up on John and presented him with divorce papers. Living with John had its happy moments, but I've moved on. Fortunately, I have a job, no kids, and plan to take better care of myself from now on. John, once proud of his high-earning wife, now faced the reality of living on his own without sufficient means. As the divorce settlement shaved his savings, he was forced to sell his home. Unwilling to lower his lifestyle, John set high expectations for his next job. However, positions that met his high standards were rare. His miscalculations weren't just about his position. Previously, living off both his and Ashley's salaries allowed for a quite affluent lifestyle. Now, even with the same salary, he had to cut his living standards in half. Without a job, John moved to a cheaper apartment. Eventually, he might have thought staying in this place was the problem, and quietly moved to another state. No one, including Ashley, knows what happened to John afterward. Meanwhile, Ashley is doing well in life. Initially regretting not having children, she found new purpose in volunteer work, invited by a friend hoping to make a difference in the lives of underprivileged children abroad. Next year, she plans to visit Africa to meet those children. She sold all her luxury brands, living minimally. I'm grateful to you for giving me a chance to change my perspective on life now, Ashley says, cheerfully with simpler makeup and clothing. She caught the attention of some male colleagues, making her future seem promising. 3 months later, Sarah gave birth to a healthy girl. We became parents of 3. The responsibility is greater, but the kids are irreplaceable treasures. Sarah says she wants one more, and I'm all for it. Growing up poor, I can't let my children face the same fate. Maintaining my health and working hard is crucial. Lately, I've come to understand what it means to live vicariously through your children. However, I'm careful not to force them into what I believe is right, trusting Sarah to keep me in check. The county's redevelopment project is progressing well. Due to the lack of adequate transportation in this region, reliance on cars is inevitable. Those who have disabilities have to drive a car to get to the hospital. It's a problem occurring all across the U.S. However, in 5 years, the development of subway lines and dedicated bus lanes will enable people to travel to many places without needing a car. I've heard that autonomous buses will also be introduced on a trial basis. The number of hospitals and nursing homes is expected to increase as well. Even though I'm working hard now, we will all inevitably age. We're striving to make our town more livable for when that time comes, not just for us, but for the future of our children. Doing all we can now is the only way forward. As I look up at a building under construction, I make a renewed pledge to myself to strive even harder.
When you heard the name of my company, you were probably so surprised that you were unable to speak. I organized this reunion in order to hold this man accountable. Joe was the leader of the group who teased and harassed me throughout middle school. I couldn't put up with him being superior to me, even after we were reunited as adults. I changed from who I was before. So, which branch are you in? Branch? What do you mean? Obviously, I'm in the U.S. branch because I'm American. So you're not at headquarters then? Are you boasting that you work in a branch office? Joe hesitated for a second at my answer. What? Where do you work then? I flashed my teeth and smirked at him. This marks the start of my major return. I'm Ken Carter, and I'm 32 years old. My classmates and I used to study together at Lincoln Middle School. It has been 17 years since I graduated at the age of 15. I now reside abroad, but I visited my hometown for the first time in a long time. Since you need a car to get anywhere in this area, I drove quickly through the streets I knew well, returning to the spots where I used to hang out. The roads were smooth and pleasant to drive on because they were well paved. A big edifice appeared as I swung the driving wheel and turned a bend. The words Lincoln Middle School shone prominently next to the great entrance. I parked in the lot reserved for guests and teachers. I went outside, past the gym, and went into the school building where I used to study. Since I had been here, everything had changed. The grounds were kept up well, and the school had a comprehensive renovation. I could hear students excitedly rehearsing for their sports teams when the sun was still high in the sky. I questioned whether they were having fun in middle school. I visited my former homeroom teacher, Sam Harrison, who is currently the senior year head teacher, in the faculty room after perusing the classrooms. Several teachers were occupied at their workstations, despite the fact that it was a Friday afternoon. It must be difficult. I felt a little sorry for them. Sam smiled and got to his feet as soon as he spotted me. I pretended to be someone paying a visit to a long-time, beloved mentor. There were no problems because I had already informed him that I would be arriving today. Tomorrow, I'm heading to the United States. Before that, I wanted to see Joe and the others, so I decided to hold a little reunion in one of the classrooms. That sounds fine. You are welcome to utilize the area. These days, the third-floor classrooms are unoccupied since there are fewer students. That meant I could say whatever I wanted without holding back. I couldn't help but smile. Even Sam had gotten older. He had graduated from this middle school, gone on to the top high school in the state, and then attended a university in the city. He studied education and, upon graduation, returned to his alma mater as a teacher. In his very first year as a teacher, he became our homeroom teacher. This really brings back memories. Haven't you been in the U.S. much? No. I've been living overseas the whole time. Coming back after so long, I was shocked by how much has changed. I remember you six were always close. You were always messing around in the hallways, making noise. I still remember it clearly. Hearing that made my body stiffen. If he remembered so clearly, why didn't he do anything? Calling it being close or just goofing around. What exactly was he watching? And this man is the senior year head teacher now? Are the current students having a good school life under him? Back in middle school, I didn't know anything about life. I still had the mindset of an elementary schooler, believing that adults were naturally superior and that kids had to obey them. But now I understand that even teachers have strengths and weaknesses. The reality is, after finishing college, They go straight into teaching without ever experiencing the real world. Maybe Sam had genuinely tried to be a good teacher in his own way. But does that make my resentment disappear? In a few days, the State Education Board will receive evidence of Sam having an affair with a student's mother. What happens after that is none of my concern. I'll be on a flight out of here tomorrow. I made my way to the third-floor classroom where I once spent time with my classmates. With my left leg not moving the way I wanted, even just climbing up a middle school staircase to the third floor was quite the struggle. When I stepped into the classroom and absent-mindedly gazed out the window, Joe walked in, with that same smug, nasty grin as always. He looked at me and said, "Hey, long time no see. You haven't changed a bit. Still got that dumb look on your face." I'm not sure if I still look the same as I did 17 years ago, but Joe has changed a lot. Even though he's only 32, his belly sticks out, and he's balding on top. Back in the day, there were girls who used to swoon over him, but I'm sure they'd be disappointed now. It's been a while. I'm glad to see you. I forced a smile as I said something I didn't mean. I have nothing but bad memories of Joe. He was the golden boy of our class, the leader among the boys, with his 4 henchmen, Tom, Jack, Dave, and Mike. He bullied anyone he didn't like, and he did it in a way that made it look like we were just messing around whenever a teacher was watching. During breaks, they would drag me into the hallway, jab me with mops, hold me down, and kick me in the stomach. Our homeroom teacher, Sam, and every other teacher saw Joe as their favorite student. Seriously, what were they even looking at? I heard footsteps coming up the stairs, and soon the rest of them appeared. It was Tom, Jack, Dave, and Mike. The teachers always thought we were part of the same friend group. As soon as they saw Joe, they greeted him with nostalgia. "Joe, long time no see. You've put on even more weight since last time." Yeah, being in sales means lots of client dinners. I've been to almost every top restaurant in the city. That sounds great. You should take us sometime. We go way back, after all. From what I remember, Joe, Tom, and Jack all left town when they went to college. Meanwhile, Dave and Mike stayed local, attending university here. "Have you 5 kept in touch since middle school?" I asked. "Yeah. We all went to different high schools, so we've barely seen each other." "Well, we all went to pretty good universities, but that's no surprise. We've always been special." Jack's words made me let out a dry laugh. Did they really think being special meant they could do whatever they wanted? Joe was the one who fixated on tormenting me, but Tom and Jack weren't much better. Dave and Mike just followed along, hoping to stay on Joe's good side. Back in middle school, Joe was dazzling to everyone. Both guys and girls admired him. Tom and Jack saw themselves as Joe's closest friends. Dave and Mike idolized him and followed him around. And me? I was nothing more than a punching bag for their amusement. I had hoped that after middle school, they had struggled a little in life and gained some empathy. If they had acknowledged their past and apologized, I was willing to forgive them. But instead, they all started bragging about their careers. Actually, Mike and I started a business together. It's tough, but being our own bosses is worth it. Dave and I have been tight since middle school. We get along great. And since we both stayed in town, we make the perfect business partners. Joe barely paid attention to their conversation, staring out the window instead. He was probably waiting for someone to ask about him. Hearing about other people's success wasn't exactly his favorite topic. With no one else bringing it up, I decided to do it myself. "So, Joe, what are you up to these days?" "All I know is that you went to college in the city." Joe's eyes lit up. He grinned, clearly thrilled that someone had finally asked. "Well, I work at Ford Pharmaceuticals. I've been at the top of my division since I joined, and I'm on track to become a manager soon." Tom and Jack, who already knew, nodded and smiled proudly. Meanwhile, Dave and Mike, who had stayed in town, looked surprised. Seriously? That's amazing. I just read that the company's French headquarters has started full-scale research on a potential cancer cure. It's all over the news. Joe, you're working for an incredible company. Joe nodded smugly at their praise. Then he looked at me, who didn't respond to anything. You must be shocked hearing my company name, huh? So stunned you can't even speak. The whole reason I planned this reunion was to knock him down a peg. Back in middle school, Joe led the charge in tormenting me. Even now, as adults, he still looks down on me, and I refuse to tolerate it any longer. I am not the same person I was back then. So, which branch are you at? I asked. What do you mean? I'm American, so obviously, I work in the U.S. branch. So you're not at headquarters. You really think working in a branch office is worth bragging about? Joe hesitated at my remark, looking flustered. Then where do you work? He asked. I flashed a confident grin, baring my teeth. This is where my comeback begins. I work at the same company as you, Ford Pharmaceuticals, but not at the U.S. branch. I've never seen you around the office, Joe muttered. That's because I work at the French headquarters. That's why we've never run into each other. Joe and the others were completely stunned when they heard I worked at the headquarters of a world-famous multinational corporation. If they found out I was actually on the executive board, their jaws might just hit the floor. Enjoying the moment, I took my time looking at each of their dumbfounded faces. This was exactly why I had invited them back to our old school. I wanted to see these clueless expressions up close. Tom, who was the closest to Joe, finally spoke up. Hey, why are we even here right now? Joe, you sent me an email about a great investment opportunity, saying we should meet up since we'd all be back home for the holidays. Same here. I live near the city, so I figured this was a rare chance to catch up with everyone. And from what I heard, Joe's been making a fortune off investments and living the high life. What? I never sent any emails. Joe snapped. I got a message from Dave saying he and Mike started a business and made a killing in investments. That's why I came, Tom added. Dave and Mike both shouted at the same time. Same here. The five of them exchanged wary glances, suspicion growing on their faces. Being summoned back to their old high school by an email none of them actually sent. It was only natural that they'd be confused. I smirked, amused by their reactions. Well, of course. That's because I was the one who sent those emails. You used my name to trick them into coming here. So it wasn't Dave who called me. It was you. Joe asked, his voice sharp. That's right. I figured investment would be the perfect bait for you. And I also happen to know each of you has your own little problems right now. None of them could understand why I had gathered them here in this classroom. But for me, this was the only place where I could settle things once and for all. Back in middle school, I suffered endlessly under their bullying and harassment. The only thing that kept me going was the thought that once I graduated, I could finally escape from them. But just before graduation, during one of their so-called wrestling matches, they injured my spine. The left side of my body was paralyzed, and I could barely leave my house. I couldn't even attend my own graduation. It was one of the lowest points of my life. I had to take a year off from the high school I was supposed to attend, spending that time seeing doctor after doctor. Eventually, a doctor in New York recommended treatment abroad, so my parents and I moved to France. I endured 3 major surgeries and managed to regain my ability to walk, though some paralysis remained in my left leg. While still in the hospital, I transferred to a local high school in France and continued my studies there. Technically, I should have graduated a year later than my peers, but I took advantage of an accelerated program and ended up in the workforce at the same time as everyone else. I landed a job at one of the world's top pharmaceutical companies, Ford Pharmaceuticals, and quickly built a strong track record. Having spent so much time in hospitals, I deeply understood both the doctor's desire to heal and the patient's desperate hopes for a cure. I worked with that perspective every day, and eventually, Adam Ford, the CEO himself, took notice of me. Adam had a habit of giving what seemed like impossible assignments, but I always found a way to accomplish them. At one point, I even traveled to African nations where medicine was hard to come by, working alongside volunteers and makeshift clinics. All my efforts paid off, and last year, I was finally promoted to the executive board. Then, by pure chance, I discovered that Joe, my old tormentor, was working at the U.S. branch. For a moment, I wondered if he had changed, but when I spoke to people at the American office, I found out he was still the same, bullying those who were weaker than him. When I heard that, my anger boiled over. From that moment on, I swore I would make him pay. I contacted the U.S. branch director and got my hands on Joe's company profile. His company email address was listed there, so I used it to carry out my plan. I also started looking into what had happened to Joe after high school. He had gone on to a state high school known for its strong sports program, where he lived his best life playing soccer. While I was suffering in a hospital, he was busy chasing a ball, even making it to the national tournament in his senior year. He got a sports scholarship to a private university in New York, but life didn't go as smoothly as he expected. Even though he played soccer for all 4 years, he never made the starting lineup once. His grades weren't great either, but an older teammate who took a liking to him secretly helped him get through. When he landed a job at Ford Pharmaceuticals, his parents acted like they had won the lottery. To be fair, in terms of making them happy, he was a model son. If he had just focused on his job, he probably would have climbed the corporate ladder and continued making his parents proud. But then came a problem. He got caught up in the recent investment craze and poured a huge amount of money into it. That was his weak spot. That's why I set up this whole investment scheme to lure him here. While tracking Joe, I also dug into what the other 4 were up to. Tom had gone to the same high school as Joe, but wanted to move to the city, so he attended a private university in New York. His family ran a large liquor store back home, and his parents had hoped he would take over the business. But Tom had completely adapted to city life and never returned home, instead landing a job at a major trading company. Up to this point, Tom's life had been going smoothly, but in his 3rd year at the company, he faced a major setback. His biggest workplace rival married the boss's daughter. From that point on, his rival kept getting promotions and is now at the head of the sales department at the corporate headquarters. On the other hand, while Tom was part of the flashy sales department, I heard he was constantly brushed aside by his rival and struggling in his daily work. Jack, who was especially close to Joe and Tom, had hit a roadblock when applying to high school. He had studied hard to get into the same school as the 2 of them, but on the day of the interview, he came down with a terrible cold and failed. In the end, he attended a private backup school and spent relatively fulfilling years there. As one of Joe's devoted followers, Jack was determined to follow the same path. He took a year off to reapply and finally got into the same university and department as Joe. However, Joe didn't see the friendship the same way Jack did. Since Jack was now a year behind, they barely took any classes together. Even when Jack went to support Joe at soccer games, Joe rarely played. Over time, Joe started avoiding Jack, and their friendship faded. Back in middle school, Jack believed that he, Joe, and Tom shared a special bond, but Joe never thought of Jack as that important. When Jack received an email from Joe this time, he was probably overjoyed. When I sent the message, he even replied with a long email full of gratitude. I was actually looking forward to seeing his reaction once he realized the truth. Now that I was watching it unfold, Jack looked more than just disappointed. He was genuinely in shock. Serves him right. Tracking what happened to Dave and Mike was even easier. Neither of them had ever left town. Unlike Joe and the others who moved to the city, these 2 had lived completely different lives. Mike's family owned an auto repair shop. Born as the son of the owner, he grew up without any real struggles. However, he was never particularly bright, and his grades had been poor since middle school. He started high school, but since the school was full of rough students, he ended up transferring to an online high school. After that, he shut himself away at home for years. His parents and relatives were deeply worried about his future. That's when his old friend, Dave, reached out. He proposed that they pool their money together and start a business. More than Mike himself, it was his parents who jumped at the idea, funding the venture. Finally, there was Dave. His story was even more unique. Like Mike, he was never good at studying, but he came from a long line of city council members and was raised without many restrictions. He got into a decent high school, and out of the 5 of them, was the only one to attend a university in Spain. But it was more of a language study program, and it didn't give him much of an advantage when it came to finding a job. He landed a position at a well-known construction company, but quit after 3 years and drifted aimlessly for a while. Eventually, he was inspired by a college friend who had started a company and decided to do the same. He borrowed some money from his parents and pitched the idea to his old middle school buddy, Mike, who came from a wealthy family. Mike's parents, already anxious about their son's future, were even more enthusiastic about the idea than he was. That's how their company came to be. But from what I heard from people in the industry, they were barely staying afloat. That's why I used Joe's name to send them an email, pretending to offer an investment to support their business. Completely falling for it, Dave and Mike showed up at this reunion full of excitement. In the end, out of all of us, I was the one who had risen the highest. Compared to me, the rest of them were nothing but losers. I held back a laugh and calmly spoke. "Sounds like life hasn't been too kind to you guys, Joe. Sorry to say, but I have no intention of investing in your plans. And I'm not going to fund Mike and Dave's company either. You can go ahead and fail on your own." "So you knew we were all struggling and called us here anyway? You just wanted to rub it in our faces." "That's exactly right. Tom and Jack seemed to be struggling at work, and I heard Mike and Dave poured a ton of money into their startup. But from what I hear, the industry doesn't expect them to last even a year. Serves you all right." Tom snarled, "You bastard," and lunged at me. Just then, a woman's voice called out from the other side of the classroom door. "What are you doing, Tom? Get away from Ken." "Olivia, glad you made it. We're done talking. Come on in." A stunning woman with long, flowing black hair stepped into the classroom. The 5 of them were visibly shocked when they heard me call her Olivia. "Wait, Olivia? You mean Olivia Miller from middle school?" "That's right, Joe. You've changed a lot." "Well, I guess it's been 17 years, so that's understandable." Back in middle school, Olivia was the girl we all admired. She was going to play a crucial role in today's reunion. When I explained my plan to her, she immediately responded, "Sounds fun," and agreed to help. Olivia and I actually reconnected about 3 years ago. At the time, I had already started thinking about this plan, but I hadn't considered involving her. After middle school, Olivia attended a prestigious all-girls private high school, part of an affiliated university. She continued there and studied American literature. Born into one of the most prominent families in the state, she was adored by her parents, but had never really developed a sense of independence. She had always assumed she would marry someone from a similarly wealthy background and become a housewife. In fact, after graduating college, she agreed to an arranged marriage her parents set up. But it didn't work out, and she ended up divorcing. She never had children, but apparently that didn't bother her in the slightest. My reunion with Olivia happened entirely by chance. I'd attended a New Year's party hosted by her grandfather, former Congressman Edward Miller, as a representative executive of Ford Pharmaceutical. When we saw each other again after so many years, we immediately hit it off. Once we realized we were both single, we naturally started thinking about our future. Since reconnecting with me, she began questioning the life she had lived following her parents' expectations and started actively engaging in society. Now she's part of a volunteer organization, dedicating her time to supporting single mothers. With the 5 of them looking shaken, I quietly spoke. We're getting married soon. How the hell did someone like you end up with Olivia? Oh my, I'd appreciate it if you didn't complain about my future husband. Olivia took my arm and leaned against me as the 5 of them stood there, stunned. At some point, the voices of the students had faded away. The sun had completely set, and I switched on the classroom lights. The cold blue glow of the LEDs illuminated our faces. Joe, in particular, looked even paler than when he first walked into the room. This middle school reunion, 17 years in the making, had turned into my long-awaited revenge. Leaving the 5 of them behind, I walked out of the school with Olivia by my side. Tomorrow, I would take her back with me to France. It would be a long time before I returned to the U.S. again. Are you satisfied now? Yeah, completely. I can finally move forward with a fresh start. Olivia gently took my hand and pressed it against her cheek. Feeling her warmth, I decided to leave the past behind for good. I didn't curse them, but after that day, things only got worse for the 5 of them. Joe, who had been struggling with investments, made a desperate high-stakes gamble and lost everything. He even had to sell the house he had just bought. Tom, despite his rival being promoted to department head, failed at work and was demoted to a remote branch office. Jack's company went bankrupt due to financial troubles, leaving him unemployed and growing more anxious by the day. As expected, Mike and Dave's startup couldn't stay afloat, and they found themselves drowning in financial difficulties. And just like that, my long battle with Joe and his gang ended in complete victory. I returned to France with Olivia, and we started a new life in a luxury apartment in Paris. Olivia, who had been accustomed to luxury, had recently started finding joy in being frugal. On weekends, she made sandwiches, and we went to the park together. We never had any financial worries, but with the cost of living in Paris rising rapidly, it was nice to see our savings grow. If we had children in the future, we would be able to provide them with the best education. Today marked the 5th anniversary of my reunion with Olivia. While she hummed a tune, making sandwiches in the kitchen, I secretly picked up my phone and made a reservation at a high-end restaurant with a view of the Eiffel Tower.